Every single nation on this planet is currently living on borrowed time and borrowed cash. Right now, the United States is staring at a bill for over $38 trillion, the biggest mountain of debt in its entire history. If you move across the Atlantic, the European Union is sitting on roughly $14 trillion. Japan? They are deep in it too, at nearly $9 trillion. You might assume that the oil giants like Saudi Arabia or the manufacturing titans like Germany and China would be the exception, but they all owe staggering amounts of money. Now here is where it gets interesting. If everyone is deep in the red, who actually holds the green? It is a paradox that makes your head spin. We are stepping into the territory of the financial historian, where the lines between wealth, power, and the past start to blur. It is never quite as straightforward as it seems on a spreadsheet. You see, debt isn't just some heavy weight we are dragging around. It is the very frame that holds up our modern world. Every conflict, every economic boom, and every painful crash is built on this invisible scaffolding of I owe us. If you follow the money long enough, you realize something a bit spooky. The world doesn't really owe money to some outside force. It mostly owes it to itself. But don't let that fool you. Not everyone is getting a fair shake in this arrangement. To really get how we ended up drowning in $315 trillion of total global debt, which is almost 3 times bigger than the entire world economy, we have to look back at the start. Long before anyone was tapping a credit card or moving numbers on a smartphone, the concept of national debt wasn't dreamed up by bankers on Wall Street. It was born on the battlefield. Back in 1694, England was locked in a nasty fight with France and was literally running out of gold. The king had to swallow his pride and ask a group of merchants for a lifeline, in exchange for a steady stream of interest paid for by future taxes. These merchants funded the crown's war. To keep the books straight, they set up the Bank of England. This was a total game changer. Suddenly, a government could spend money it hadn't even earned yet. In return, the people lending the money got a government promise, a piece of paper they could sell, buy, or trade. That was the birth of the government bond, the tiny seed that grew into the massive financial system we live in today. France saw what England was doing and copied it. The Netherlands took the idea and polished it further. Even the brand new United States used this system to pay for its revolution and later its push out west. Having a national debt stopped being a sign of a failing country. It became a way to show you were actually trustworthy. The power to borrow was the power to rule. In the old days, empires would invade a place to steal gold. Now they just issue bonds to collect interest. The fight moved from the trenches to the balance sheets. Fast forward 3 centuries, and debt is basically the world's most successful export. While the US owes that $38 trillion and Japan is over $9 trillion, the world is adding $1 trillion in new debt every 100 days. Everyone is borrowing, and every bank is lending. Whether you realize it or not, through your taxes and your retirement fund, you are both the person who owes money and the person who is owed. But who is on the other side of that deal? Let's look at America, because its debt is the world's debt. Of that $38 trillion, about half is publicly held, which just means it is owed to investors rather than other government departments. About 2/3 of those investors are American. Think banks, pension funds, mutual funds, insurance companies, and the Federal Reserve itself. The other third, roughly $9 trillion, belongs to foreign countries. Japan is the biggest fan, holding about $1 trillion, followed by China at roughly $800 billion. Then you have the UK, Luxembourg, and Belgium. So, while people love to say the US is in debt to China, that's technically true, but it only accounts for about 2% of the total. Mostly, America owes money to America. It is a giant circular mirror. The Treasury sends out bonds, banks buy them, and the Federal Reserve often buys them back, creating more dollars in the process. You pay taxes to cover the interest, which then goes back into American retirement accounts. This circular logic isn't just an American thing, it is the global norm. Japan lends to the US through treasuries. The US sends money to Europe through the IMF. Europe lends to developing countries through the World Bank. And those developing nations, they send it right back by putting their foreign exchange reserves into Western bonds. It is a planet-wide game of hot potato, but the potato is just a stack of promises. Every nation is holding on to someone else's IOU. It is like a poker game where everyone borrowed their chips from the person sitting next to them. The only rule keeping the game alive is that nobody gets up from the table. But there is a fourth layer to this: the markets. Behind these bonds are massive institutions like hedge funds and sovereign wealth funds managing tens of trillions. They are the ones who really decide who gets to borrow money for cheap and who has to pay a premium to survive. When they stop believing in a country, the currency tanks and the government usually falls. Voters pick the politicians, but the markets pick the survivors. And the ultimate power player here is the central bank. They don't just manage the debt, they actually manufacture it. Every time the Fed or the European Central Bank buys government bonds, they create money out of thin air to pay for it. One person's debt becomes another person's asset. In our world, there is no such thing as debt-free money. Every coin and every digital dollar has an invisible IOU written on it. This whole loop has stayed alive for decades because of one thing: confidence. As long as people believe governments will keep paying the interest, even if they never pay back the actual loan, the wheels keep turning. But you might think this is a one-time mistake, but we've seen what happens when that trust breaks. Remember Greece in 2010? Their debt became impossible to manage and bondholders panicked. Rates shot up and the IMF and ECB had to step in. But that help came with a heavy price: austerity. Massive tax hikes, brutal spending cuts, and people losing their jobs everywhere. For a whole generation, bailout became a dirty word for sacrifice. We saw it in Argentina with their constant defaults, and in Sri Lanka when they literally ran out of cash to pay for fuel because of their debt. When the system snaps, the creditors finally show their faces: the IMF, the rating agencies, and the nameless bondholders who can put a whole country in a chokehold. Yet, even when things fall apart, the logic doesn't change. New loans just cover the old ones, and the machine resets with a new name on the balance sheet. That's because, in the 21st century, debt isn't meant to be paid off. It's meant to be rolled over. Your government isn't planning to ever reach a zero balance. That is not a secret theory. It is literally the policy. If you or I take out a loan, we have to pay it back. But governments treat debt like a monthly subscription. They just issue new bonds to pay off the old ones. Economists call it refinancing. But really, the product being sold is the interest, the rent we pay for a stable world. The global economy is like a shark that has to keep moving to stay alive. It runs on trust, not repayment. The US isn't going to clear its $38 trillion tab. It will just refinance it until the end of time. Japan has been doing this for decades, with debt over 250% of its GDP, yet their interest rates stay near zero. Investors aren't waiting for the end on the loan. They are just waiting to renew the deal. Why? Because government debt is seen as the safest thing on earth. A treasury bond isn't a burden. It is the bedrock of the markets. Banks use it as security, and pension funds rely on it. If Washington actually paid off every dollar it owed, the world would lose its most trusted asset. The money supply would dry up and we'd hit a massive depression. Paying it off would actually break the economy. So, governments keep the rhythm going. Debt is the heartbeat of capitalism, pulsing through every mortgage and pension. So when you hear a politician talking about balancing the budget or paying down the debt, they're usually selling you an illusion. The goal isn't to kill the debt. It is to keep it manageable and popular so the world keeps believing. Because if that belief disappears, the numbers don't matter anymore. Rates will spike, and the whole house of cards falls down. That is the real secret of sovereign debt. The plan was never to pay it back. The plan is to keep the world convinced that they could. It is a loop of trust, and as long as it holds, the numbers can keep growing. But that trust isn't shared equally. Interest flows up from the workers to the institutions. Debt is a transfer between classes, which is why inequality and debt always go up together. The system rewards the owners and taxes the payers. We are all in this engine, but at the top, there is no single villain to point at. It isn't just China, or Wall Street, or the IMF. It's all of them, and all of us. We have turned debt into money itself. The line between who owes and who is owed has vanished. Debt used to mean being a slave. Now it just means being in balance. But if that balance ever slips, we'll remember the truth. A promise can't be kept forever. If you want to understand how financial history repeats itself, subscribe and join our journey.